Yo, I'm Candy and I be knitting, and today I be showing you how I prepare raw fleece for spinning. I've been very transparent over the years that I've been learning as I go, a lot of trial and error, a lot of getting myself in over my head, and I'm always trying to master a thing. I try something, maybe it doesn't work. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do that anymore. But then there's something in the back of my mind that says, keep going. So I've scoured a few fleeces over the year, washed raw fiber a few times over the years. And as I've said before, my first time doing it, I bought a 9-pound fleece from Maryland Sheep and Wool and did some cursory Googling, and the results could have been better. Very long story short. The way I initially approached scouring, washing the fleece, lambs, sheep, they're outside animals. They get dirty. They have lanolin, which is a thick, almost like waxy substance that coats their fur and keeps them waterproof when they're outside in torrential rain or whatever, what may have you. And you have to remove that before you work. Well, you don't have to. I prefer to remove the dirt and the lanolin before I work with a fleece. I don't want to bring a lot of dirt and dust in my house. The older I get, the more sensitive I seem to be to upper respiratory issues. Also, a lot of that stuff can gum up my drum carder, can gum up my wheel. And not every project is suited to a heavy lanolin wool. Like if I was knitting a bunch of fisherman sweaters, that would be great. But the initial way I learned was maybe you do a cold soak wherein you take the wool, soak it in water, and then you would proceed with the scouring, maybe not. And then you proceed to wash it with some sort of soap that is capable of removing lanolin. And you do that cycle repeatedly of washing until, quote, the water runs clear. The issue with that approach for me was that takes a lot of water. I was handling the wool a lot, so a lot of the initial fleeces I washed, I did deal with some felting, because in order to remove that lanolin, you have to heat the wool to a certain degree so the lanolin literally melts off of the fleece. And handling wet wool, agitation plus heat equals felting. Also, it was just a very labor intensive process of removing the fleece from the water, squeezing the water out, rerunning the water, carrying buckets. My bathtub that I use, I would move it from a bucket outside to my bathtub upstairs, and that's, carrying pounds and pounds of weight. I would be like aching the next day after spending pretty much all day processing a fleece. And it's kind of a process where you're doing like 20-minute, 30-minute baths at a time. So not getting much else accomplished, and a lot of toting water. And I was just like, this is a lot. I don't know if I'll do this again. The issue that also complicated the issue is because I had this big 9-pound fleece, and before you wash a fleece, there's a process called skirting, where you go through and you take out less desirable parts of the fleece. You might remove big pieces of vegetable matter, seeds, bugs, all kinds of little things that live inside of a sheep fleece. And I have learned that there is no yes, no when it comes to fleeces. There are spectrums, if you will. And so it's an outside animal. You're not going to have, yes, this fleece is dirty, yes, this fleece is clean. There's going to be degrees of how clean or dirty that is. So that being said, a lot of times I'll go get a fleece and it'll say, this fleece has been skirted. Does that mean that there are 0 piece of vegetable matter in that fleece? Absolutely not. It means someone took the time to go through and remove a lot of it, depending on if it was heavily skirted, lightly skirted. Also, they may not know, they might take out, usually they'll take out the big kind of poopy bits of the fleece before taking it in, but they're not sure what you're going to want to use it for. Maybe you need really short cuts and you're going to make dryer balls or do felting. Maybe you want really long and only the most luxurious pieces of locks. And so for the most part, it's up to the spinner to decide, okay, I want this piece of the fleece, I don't want that piece of the fleece. That being said, I was taking the word, oh, this has been skirted, I don't have to do anything else to this, for granted. And so skirting is an essential part that has nothing to do with the actual, has little to do with the cleaning process, because it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. If I don't do a good job skirting it, all I'm doing is washing hay. There's no amount of soap that's going to take hay out of hair. You have to physically pick it out of there. Sometimes it'll like fall out during the process of either carding it up, combing it, et cetera, but really I have found that I want to do as much of that labor up front. Also, any short second cuts, any locks that have a lack of integrity to them, you know, you can go through and test the integrity of each lock. Some people are going to do that, some people aren't going to do that. I say all that to say this: these are some of the things that I've had to learn over the years. And this year, I've been doing a lot of research over the Suint method, S-U-I-N-T. Suint is a sweat that is present in sheep. So you have the lanolin, which is the wax that runs down the coat, and it seems to be, from my research, there's a reciprocal relationship. The more lanolin a sheep has, the less suint it has, and vice versa. So there's this sweat that's present within the sheep's fleece, and when you soak that in water and you soak it over a long period of time, it becomes fermented, and healthy, fun bacteria come out and eat a lot of the biological refuse that is on that fleece. And so by doing so, you end up with a much cleaner fleece before you even get to the point where you're trying to wash the lanolin out. So you can get a lot of that dirt out, any residual poopy bits out, any of that kind of stuff out of the fleece. And what it does is it saves a whole bunch of water. I've had to go, I think, I can't even count how many washes I've done with the fleece. But with this Suint method, you have to, you leave it for like a week to soak, and pretty much my second rinse, the water is starting to come really, really clear. And it's the perfect time of year to do this method, because it only works when it's about 90 plus degrees outside consistently. And remember that, consistently. So the last time we met, I was telling you about the fleeces I have got. And this is my Morit named Maurice. I got this from a very nice lady who was not vending at a fiber festival, but she was just kind of hanging out under a tent with Maurice in a trash bag. And that's pretty much how you kidnap me. It's like, hey, I got a fleece over here, and she just happened to be selling this fleece. I do have like her phone number. I think she's retired from like shepherding, because so she doesn't have like a social media presence or anything like that, but I do have like her personal contact information. But this was a Morit fleece. The reason I got him is Morits are considered an endangered sheep species. And like I was saying, there's this relationship between lanolin and suint, and this is a Morit is a Scottish breed, and they tend to have relatively low lanolin. So this is actually a pretty good fleece to try this method on. She did preempt me by saying, like I said, I don't think she is a shepherd anymore, and she's a little bit older, and her friend, who was about the same age as her, were there, and they were just trying to sell this fleece. And she did say, we did the best we could. So Maurice had a lot of vegetable matter in him. I think he just was more of like a pet. I don't think she was like really trying to do a lot with she said she actually tried to get rid of him for years, and he just kind of hung out with her. And so he had a very happy life, but that means he had a lot of hay and seeds and things in his fleece. And so yeah, right now, in case you haven't heard, I live in Virginia, East Coast, Europe. We're in the middle of a heat wave, so this is like actually perfect Suint weather. And also we're in the middle of a drought where I live too. And so minimal water. Soaked them in like a big plastic tub. I did try my best to like separate out locks so I would have an easier time spinning with him and keeping it organized and taking out a lot of those short bits. And it definitely paid off. And so just laying them inside of a little garment bag. I do recommend getting like a lingerie bag or a garment bag to wash it in, because just having it in a bucket, it's hard to handle. Soaked them about a week. Once you build up that bath though, then you can reuse that same water, which is really great when you have like a big, I think Mowry is like 7 pounds. And so I'm able to reuse that water, because once it gets funky, it kind of stays funky. And then you can use it, you can soak it for like 2 to 3 days after that. Or the process only takes 2 to 3 days with each subsequent load of the sheep. I did have to dump him out because there was like a heat wave at the beginning of the summer. I got my bath going, and like I was saying before, you want it to be consistently above a certain temperature, and that's kind of hard at the beginning of summer where those overnight temperatures tend to dip. And so it did get a little cold outside, algae started to grow, and so I kind of started over once it got hotter outside. But it's also great because you can then dry your fleece outside. So if you search Suint bath on Google, there's so much resources out there. I'll share like one of the blogs that was like my main go-to, but basically soaked him for about a week. Then once the soaking is done, rinse. And a good rinse, like if this process is working well, and I had, like I said, I didn't necessarily wait till those overnight temperatures were like consistently warm, but if the process works, once you rinse it off, that smell goes away. Like it's a very strong fermentation process, but it's anaerobic bacteria. So the minute it hits the air, the smell should dissipate. And so gave him a little rinse outside, gave it a little cold soak outside. Once all that bacteria is off of him, bring him into the house. Hot tap water with unicorn power scour, and then another rinse. Same process as usual, where you rinse it until the water's coming clean. But like I said, with this soaking method, it's happening a lot sooner. And then I've seen debate on this, and chime in if you process fleeces. I did do one rinse with vinegar, but then I rinsed out the vinegar. It's not good to have vinegar just sitting on fiber, but I did a rinse with vinegar and then rinse the vinegar out. But then I saw some people say, don't ever use vinegar on fiber at all, ever. So let me know what you think about that. The other thing that I like about this process is I just recently came across the idea of over processing a fleece. I had never heard that phrase before, and I think I was watching Stitches in Starlight, and they talked about scouring a fleece too much to the point where then you have to add lanolin back and it becomes like almost like straw, really limp. And I had never thought of that before. I thought, like maybe I'm doing something wrong because I'm trying to get it clean, so I'm using all this soap. I also have used, when I first started processing, I used like Dawn dish soap, because a lot of people use Dawn dish soap, swear by Dawn dish soap. I've seen some debate on that, so I don't know if I would use Dawn dish soap in the future. But the fact that I'm washing it over and over and over again with like a harsh soap is definitely removing a lot of the lanolin. So what I have here, I have not taken all the lanolin out of this. There is still a little bit of that texture, and I like that. I like the idea of controlling what your final project is or product is going to be, rather than going, like I said, there's not, yes, no, this has 100% lanolin, this has 0% lanolin. It's degrees. And so I think my personal preference is to leave a little bit of that lanolin in and not go too hog wild in it, because I definitely have some fleeces in there that, now that I know that word, I probably went too far with. So rinse, and then I finished with a cold rinse because I am a millennial who read Cosmo. It was like, you gotta close the pores with a cold rinse, which I've also heard is hogwash, to do like a hot wash and a cold wash. But it's something that I've done since I was like 13 years old, to my own hair. So I finish it off with a cold soak. And like I said, minimal hands-on time. I went from spending literally sun up to sundown washing one fleece to just doing it in smaller chunks, because that's something else I did. I did like one big fleece at a time. This method I've been doing maybe a pound and a half, soaking it, leaving it there for a minute, and then when it's time to do the rinses with power scour, or that process takes maybe 2 hours. So 2 hours, 4 rinses. I do want to try, and I'm going to link that as well. There's an Instagram post I just saw where someone was comparing all of the scouring techniques side by side with the same fleece, and I think they did a control, nothing, Dawn dish soap, which Dawn dish soap I'm not knocking Dawn dish soap, especially if that's what you have, but just some of the stuff I was reading made me nervous, because you have to buy like the right type of Dawn dish soap, and like I said, I just feel like it's kind of harsh, especially if I'm washing outside. I don't know if I can dump that outside. I know Power Scour is biodegradable. They also did Unicorn Power Scour. They did another soap I had not heard of before, and then they did a soap I had never heard of called Dirty You, and Dirty You actually got them the best results. And so I think I'm gonna buy some of that, because I have a bottle of Unicorn Power Scour that's about this big that I bought when I first knew that, okay, this is something I'm gonna wanna do. And I have about this much left, so I'm actually quite pleased that I bought it and I've used it, because I almost bought like the gallon, and I was just like, I don't know if I need a gallon. And you use like a tablespoon at a time, and so it made sense at the moment, but I think I'm gonna try this Dirty You soap. So I'll have a link to that as well. So I'm quite pleased with these results. I wanted to show y'all. So this is Maurice. This is like just freshly washed locks. Mowry is not a down breed, but it has similar characteristics to a down breed, where it has those kind of like blocky locks and just a little bit of a crimp. And then he was sun bleached on his tips. So that's what you're seeing, where the sun has shone down on him. He's got these golden kind of tips, and he's got this ashy gray, and then he goes to some deep browny grays. And what I've been doing is, because I kind of gingerly went through his fleece and separated a few locks, I just take once he's washed and dried, I just take his locks and open up the tips with my hand carders. And because I've become more diligent in separating my locks and such, I was able to do like a true worsted, spinning end to end, all of the locks facing the same way, because you can tell what end you're working with because he's blonde on the tips. And this is how he worked up. And I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of striping where his blonde tips are. And I just did this on a drop spindle, just a little bit, a few locks on a drop spindle, to see what the results are going to be. And my second fleece is Dottie, and she's a Cotswold ewe I got from the Heritage Museum. There's a second cut. She was actually sheared with scissors, and once again, chime in the comments. I have a feeling that getting cut with the scissors, like the traditional shears, will lead to more second cuts, but I also think it's probably comes down to like technique too. So let me know if you know about shearing sheep, if you think electrical versus manual shears will lead to more second cuts. But this is her, and these are actually just freshly washed locks. She had some areas where her curl or her wave is more wavy, is very defined and shiny, and that's why I didn't want to lose too much of that lanolin. And then she had some areas that were just a little bit more frizzy and just fluffy, which very much similar to a human's hair. Not all of the hair on your body or even your head is all the same texture. And so what I did with her is these areas where her locks were really shiny and well defined, I've separated them out into just a little bag, so that if I wanted to do some lock spinning or some specific things with nice shiny locks, you can use them for like those gnomes everyone's making. This would make a good beard for some of those gnomes, anything like that. I have like just a little bag. And then the rest of them, same principle with Maurice. I just fluffed up her tips, and so I have like these just clouds of her locks. I can't really, I feel like if you look very closely, you can tell where the cut end is and where the tip is. I think this is the tip, this is the cut end. And so I'm just gonna do what they call spinning from the cloud with her. And no, that's my lock sample. I'm also trying to get better at keeping track of different breeds, and so I do want to hold on to some of these locks just to show the process. And this is how she turned up on the drop spindle. And these swatches I made are based on this sweater by McElroy. It's not the right thickness of yarn, but I figured doing a swatch and a little bit of, this is like a basket weave pattern, doing a swatch like that just gives a little bit more visual interest, a little bit more excitement than just doing like a stockinette or a garter stitch swatch. Added a little bit more visual interest. And also I do eventually want to make that sweater, but I would probably, that's Ply Magazine, and so I would probably plan more intentionally what to do with my yarn. It does take a much thicker yarn. These are just 2 plies, and I do tend to spin very thinly. And so what am I going to do with these yarns, or these fibers rather? Obviously I'm going to spin them, but Maurice, I do want to go for a 3-ply, and what I want to make is the Ooey Gooey by Andrea Mowry. I want this to be my main color, and I have some other hand spin that I want to do as the contrast color. And my idea here is I'm also going to link to, what is her name? I'm trying to think. Fleece Folk Fiber is her name on YouTube, but on Instagram, she is the Duchess of Sussex, and she is from Australia. She lives in Australia, and she's very much passionate about fleece from the sheep, and she's been processing native Australian fleeces. And she had this one fleece that she literally, I want to say she separated out 5 to 10 shades of gray in this one fleece and made a gradient, and it was stunning. I am not going to get 5 to 10 shades out of Maurice, because like even she in the video, she was just like, my eyes are crossing. I don't even know what I'm separating anymore. And so as I was opening up these locks, I definitely saw what I'm just gonna call light Maurice and dark Maurice. And as I was opening up the locks, obviously the light hits them different. And so I'm just like, I think I'm seeing 2 distinct colors. I'm not sure. Also, there's like a texture differential. When you're dealing with sheep, there's usually like fine, soft locks, and then there's some coarser, rougher locks. And so I want to separate those into at least 2 piles. And I want to spin up both of those and see what goes better with my, well, I need at least a pound probably to make the Ooey Gooey. So see which one I get a better result from I'm pretty sure in a 7-pound fleece I should be able to get a good amount of either color. And then I want to spin up both, swatch with both, and see what I want to go with my color, because the contrast color that I spun up has a braid of hip strings blended with some gray Navajo churro. So gray is gonna give it more of like a muted feeling, a low contrast feeling, some muted colors mixed with gray with a gray background. That could be a look. Or deeper brown with the contrast color is going to give it more of a warm look. So it's more of like, I guess it's not light dark Maurice, it's more like cool warm Maurice. And I also think because he has these blonde tips in here, that's going to set off that stinky yellow that I was talking about in that hip strings. And so that's my plan with Maurice. I do have, I believe, yes, Maurice is 7 pounds. So I feel like I'm gonna get 4 to 5 pounds when I'm done with him. And I feel like that is approaching levels of greed that I'm not comfortable with. So I'll definitely be at least sharing some fiber with my good friend that spins. Also, because it's a conservation breed, I feel like as a fiber person, it is my responsibility to share conservation breeds with other spinners. I was also thinking of spinning up a little bit of Maurice to share with a friend from church that also knits. And Maurice, I have these locks of Maurice that I've kept all separate, but also there were some less desirable parts of Maurice. He had a lot of second cuts, a lot of VM. And so those pieces that and he had a lot of, he had some areas because he was older. Unfortunately, Maurice is no longer with us. Maurice died. That's how I came into his fleece. And so he had a lot of areas where his same as humans, we're all mammals, where it got grayer and grayer and grayer. There was also a lot of like breakage and weak points. So I took out the less desirable parts, did my best job of picking apart those pieces. It was very much like my old school way of trying to process fleece, where I just took all this parts that probably could have gone into the compost, long story short, ripped those apart, put them through my drum carder, and I'm making little fiber nests like these, and these will make a nice like thicker yarn. And I was thinking of doing like a nice bulky yarn for my friend that knits, because I'm thinking, I don't know if I can do a whole like sweaters quantity for her, but if I give her a nice bulky yarn in a decent amount of yardage, she can at least make a hat or something like that. And so I think that'll be nice. I've put him through the drum carder about 4 times, and I still need to go through and pick out some of the VM. And so this is also a lesson that this is still good. This is still good, but there were definitely points in my fiber processing days where I held on to things that I shouldn't have held on to, especially second cuts. Like I'm thinking like, oh, if I just fluff it up enough and I could, but I noticed I don't personally like nips. Some people love the texture. I don't. The big part with this is taking out those weak points. And with the second cuts is basically the person shearing the sheep, and then they go back over the spot they've already sheared. And so you end up with these little short bits of fiber. And you can pull those out very easily. The issue with this area is there were second cuts that you can pull out, but then you end up with staple links, which is just the link of the lock, that are different sizes. And I can still spin something that's like 2 inches, but you have a 6-inch piece of lock right beside that, and you try to process those together, you end up kind of a little jumbly. And so just trying to work out those bits. I also think it would be cool if I called the shepherd once I finished and was just like, hey, I finished Maurice. Would you like a bit of Maurice? I don't know if she knits or weaves or crochets or anything like that, but I would love to show her what I've done with Maurice. My plan with Dottie, the Cotswold, I have 2 pounds of dotty, so a lot less dotty. I do wish that I had done more effort to pull apart these locks, because what I want to do with dotty, I had about 2 pounds. I have about 1.3 pounds of dotty left, and that's adding the locks with the fiber. Is I want to knit something out of this book. This book is Shetland Fine Lace Knitting, Recreating Patterns from the Past by Carol Christiansen. And this was a gift from Mr. B, I guess we'll call him now. And it is about Shetland sheep. The Shetland is a island in the UK, but it's also so far north in the UK. It's kind of close to Norway, so it shares a lot of like Scandinavian traditions as well as traditional Scottish UK traditions. So it's just a very unique, special place, and they're known for these beautiful shawls. In this book, written by Carol Christiansen, she is, I don't know if she currently still is at this moment in time, but she was the curator of that museum. And what she did is she went through all the samples at the museum and created patterns. So this book is 1 part history, 1 part patterns, which is like literally right up my alley as someone who knits but also likes to read history and nonfiction. And so I would love to spin something out of here. And so I do wish, I did a pretty decent job with this, but I know, I can't think of her name at the moment, but there is a woman, I think her name's Mary something. She spins lace yarn for lace knitting, and she washes her locks very diligently, lays them all, like she'll have a bar of soap and wash 1 lock at a time and then stack up all of her locks. All of her locks are laying in the same way, because it's really about uniformity. And if y'all will humor me, I would love to just share a little bit of what's in this book, because I just felt like this was so just impressive. What does it say? Yeah, she goes into a lot of the history, and she also talks about how in Shetland, because it was their main export, were these lace patterns, a lot of the examples they have at the museum have mistakes in them. And so she's trying to recreate the pattern, but having to kind of infer what the person was trying to do, because the most impressive pieces would have gotten sold and sent to someplace else. And she also talks about, because it was a production thing and they were going for uniformity, there's no purling, it's all knits, and just so many really different things. Yeah, it says, every row is knitted rather than purled back so that the fabric has a garter stitch instead of stockinette. Most decreasing was done by a knit 2 together. Same principle. They didn't have right-leaning, left-leaning decreases because we got to get through this shawl. We don't have the time to go back and forth, and no one's, I have a hard time telling left and right decreases. So it was about production, it was about precision, but all of the yarn was hand spun. And so the fact that there was a hand spun element to a production type art form, the majority of the collection is made from hand spun woolen yarns from the Shetland breed of sheep. Skilled lace spinners chose and processed wool carefully. The yarns were spun smoothly and evenly and were usually made with 2 threads plied together. The slightest changes in thickness and evenness of the yarn would be visible in the finished piece. So it is extremely important for the hand spinner to spin consistently, even allowing for pauses in the work. Some original pieces appear to have uneven spinning, but this is sometimes the result of use and laundering. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so then she says, the knitted samples made for the project used Jamieson and Smith's 2-ply Supreme lace weight in natural white. This yarn is thicker than most lace yarns in our collection, but it was not possible to source an evenly fine hand-spun yarn in a large quantity for the samples. Motifs in the original pieces in the samples made of their designs may look different for this reason. So Carol got the researched the patterns, and then she had a group of test knitters kind of reverse engineer the patterns with her, and one of them was her sister. And so in that passage she's saying, like, going out and buying a commercial yarn is actually our second choice here. And the idea that Jameson and Smith, like I love Jameson and Smith, it's great yarn, but the idea is like these beautiful shawls, not only were they precise, well studied, there were just like these very consistent motifs in them, but the fact that it was done with hand spun yarn is just very intriguing to me, and I assume if you're watching this, it is intriguing to you as well. And the fact that they're like, I guess we'll just go to the store and buy the yarn, we really don't want to, you know. So the idea that I think what is going to make some very nice lace yarn, and I think it's going to bloom beautifully. I do need to play with my wheel a little bit, because I told y'all that I don't like to change up the settings for my wheel, but for something like this, I am willing to go a little deeper. On that note, I will wrap it up. We are on the eve of Tour de Fleece. It is July 3rd here where I am. Tomorrow is July 4th, which is the first day of Tour de Fleece. So if you're participating in that, have fun, good luck, let me know. I always say like, oh, I would love to do that. And I'm a spinner. And so like, if I'm spinning during the month of July, it is technically Tour de Fleece, but I've never like formally like joined a team and set goals and all that kind of stuff, because this is kind of like a tough time of year. Traveling, this is like vacation time. This is one of the few times of the year my whole family is off of work, school together. So we do a lot of traveling, doing a lot of entertaining of the children because I don't have school. It is hot as all get out outside. So I love the idea of processing wool, and I thought maybe I'll just process and drum card and do all that kind of stuff. Like, it feels like a very physical time of year, but I'm just not always in the mood to spin when it's 100 degrees outside, or, you know, I go to the park with my kids, I come home, I don't, you know, I'm into other things. So let me know if that's something you're doing. Until the next time. Oh, I gotta do like YouTube stuff. I haven't done this in a while. Like this video, subscribe this video, share this video, check out the links I have below. Let me know if I missed anything. Follow me on Instagram, candibknittin on Instagram, candibknittin on Ravelry. Yeah, comment, share, like, hit the bell. Can you still hype? I've seen hyped videos, but then I didn't see my hype button. I don't know, but until the next time, peace.